And we're back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal discussion about Star Trek. Currently, Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I'm so happy to have a very special guest on our episode today, my friend Moni. Say hello, everyone.
Hello. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. And today actually happens to be your birthday, so happy birthday! And I formally declare that this is the Starfleet Boys official Moni's birthday episode. So cheers to you and happy birthday.
Cheers.
Now, a lot of people will probably want to understand the context of our friendship. So I will just explain that Moni is the Mycroft to my Sherlock, or the Admiral to my Captain. In many ways, you do have the rank of Admiral, I believe.
It's very boring doing administrative work in an office.
But you did have once have the command of a starship, so you know what it's like to pilot a starship. We give all of our guests the opportunity to have a handle on the show. So, for example, Humbert, who you know is the Doctor. Scott Levy is, I don't know why I had to say his full name, but Scott is Galdu Scott. And of course, I'm Starfleet Boy. So otherwise, we'll just call you Moni. Which would you prefer?
Oh, wow. I wish I had more warning about that.
Well, you could take your time and
come
up with it.
I guess for present purposes, we'll do Moni, but I can think of one in the meantime.
I thought you would want to go with something Romulan, like, you know, Praetor or...
Well, we can go either in a Vulcan or a Romulan direction. That depends on how devious I'm feeling, I guess.
Absolutely. So I'll jump right into the episode summary. While the Enterprise is docked at McKinnly Station, the crew are taking the time to repair the ship from the battle that we just had with the Borg. Pretty awesome episode. Sorry you missed that discussion, but it's, you know, it was what you could expect, the best of both worlds part 2. But here in the aftermath, the Enterprise is getting repaired, and then meanwhile Commander Riker is supervising and seeing to everyone getting a little R&R. And so we find out that Captain Picard is taking this opportunity to go down to his home village, Avar France, and stay at his family's vineyard. And so that's happening while Worf is having to deal with a visit from his parents, Sergei and Elena. Helena. It's Elena.
Yeah. Elena. Oh, I thought there was an H in it. I couldn't tell.
I think it's Elena, but I'll have to look it up now because I don't remember. But anyways, the Rozhenkos are coming to visit, and then Wesley comes face to face with a holographic recording of his father that his father made for him when he was just a few weeks after he was born. So pretty emotional stuff going on. Captain Picard has to deal with whether or not he wants to continue with Starfleet or pursue a career in you know, civilian projects that are gonna, you know, greatly benefit humans and Earthlings, rather, I should say. Worf has to kind of balance his his Klingon side versus his very tender human side that his parents
for the record, it's Helena, by the way. I just looked it up.
It is Helena. Okay. I stand corrected. Thank you. And then Wesley comes face to face with his father, who he's been idolizing all this time, but has never really had an interaction with. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the gist of the setup of the episode. We finally get this awesome reveal of who Picard is and his family, and especially through his brother, we learn about him as he was growing up, and learn some things about his, you know, relationship with Robere, like how they were always rivals, basically, but of course, they loved each other, and we get this awesome fight in between the two brothers in the mud.
As Vikram said, the vineyard tumble.
The vineyard tumble. Yes, that's what we'll definitely. Our friend Vikram, who does have a nickname, the Dark Lord, we'll refer to it as the vineyard tumble. That's awesome. In fact, whenever we go to vineyards to have drinks, we should call it the vineyard tumble. It should be like a tradition. Cheers to that. I actually happen to have a little sake here that I was saving for a toast to your birthday. It's not a little, actually, it's a lot.
The thing that would complete this is the illegal Romulan ale.
Yes, I'm working on that. So let's jump right into it. Well, I guess actually let's not jump right into it. Before we jump right into it, since you're a new guest on Starfleet Boy, we like to find out what our guests' Star Trek stories are. So would you mind taking a few minutes to tell us how you came to Star Trek and how it's kind of impacted your life?
Yeah, well, I think as you observed when we were talking on the phone, like about a week ago, the Next Generation is literally as old as me. Actually, I might be 1 year older than the Next Generation, but
well, today
it's really been in the background for my entire life, and it's sort of permeated my upbringing. But I guess there are two competing origin stories, which, depending on which universe you're in, one might be primary or secondary. But let's start. The primary version, which my family would probably adopt, is my mom was a Trekkie and used to watch the Next Generation reruns. And I think when I really, really got sucked into it was when it started airing on Sci-Fi with the commentary first by William Shatner, and then the second running with Leonard Nimoy.
Oh, that's right.
In like 1998 or 1998, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember how like cheesy William Shatner's was. Then Leonard Nimoy was like very insightful. But that was I guess that was a formative experience. But I think even before that, you introduced me and Uvus to the movies. So I'd seen Generations and First Contact, and then I watched all of the original Star Trek movies on VHS.
Right, and then we of course you became it. You and Star Trek were like a match made in heaven. So
yeah,
of course you became an Uber fan right away, and then I remember we saw Insurrection in the theater together. Maybe
I became super obsessed with it. That's the year my obsession sort of bloomed. Like when I guess I was in 7th grade. And obviously like the optimistic outlook on the future, the sort of Elysian structure of the Federation, and just like the thrill of space travel was super appealing. And
how
so
could you say no?
In any dark period in my life, to the extent there are dark periods, you can always retreat to Star Trek and rediscover yourself and who you are, like the core. It's in the core of my DNA.
Well said. Bravo. So that's cool. I knew, of course, your story because we're best friends, but it's nice to actually hear it because one needs to be reminded. But I do recall that your mom was such a riot to watch Star Trek with, and I look forward to watching it with her again because she always sees something interesting that you may not always see.
I watched all of the reruns of the original series with her first, and then I never really got to see The Next Generation because it was never consistently aired on TV until Spike picked it up.
Yeah. But then you and I did our mega marathon.
Then we got the DVDs
when
they came out. And we did our mega marathons, and my mom also watched them with me.
Yeah, those were really fun. I would even remember that because I think we started doing those like once a week or whatever. But you were like I just left the box sets at your house, and then you just started watching them.
And I made you sit through the theme song every time.
Yeah, that's right. You're very hardcore and much more a purist in many ways than I am, because you wouldn't even tolerate skipping the opening credit. I always admired. I was like, yeah. Very, very cool. Well, thank you for sharing your Star Trek story. I'm glad to be a part of it. Honored to be a part of it. So yeah, let's jump right into the episode. What did you think of it?
Well, this is one of my favorite episodes.
Right.
For multiple reasons. Actually, like, I always have selective amnesia, because I think of it as the episode where Picard goes back to France, but obviously there's so much more going on.
But that's the main,
Helena and Sergei Roshenko, I think, this is their first appearance, right?
That's right.
And that's actually a really big deal. And like, of course, I get misty-eyed, in the climactic sequence with Robere and Picard or Jean-Luc, because they're both Picards. But yeah, the interaction between Worf and his parents and how conflicted he feels is so deeply touching at the end. It's also a huge component of the episode.
Mm-hmm. And I think that to talk about Worf, I guess we'll save Picard details of the episode for the end. But let's start with Worf. Like, I just thought, like, the whole relationship, the kind of three vignettes that were given are interesting, because I think within all three of those, there's like such a very true experience that all humans kind of go through. There comes a point in our lives as we're growing up where our parents maybe their quirks and things like that are so apparent to us, and we become very conscious of them. And so, you can see this reflected in Michael Dorn's performance as Worf, where he's just like, he's not admitting to it, but he's a little embarrassed about the way his parents are. And, of course, they're delightful. Everyone else finds them completely delightful. They're just like so charmed and surprised to see that.
But this is what created Worf.
This is what created Worf. And even like some of the stories, like Worf, getting into that fight in school.
Oh, yeah.
And like the principal saying, "Is there another? I hope he's an only child." And
sitting across from 4 boys with the bloody nose.
Yeah,
all of them.
I love the actors that they selected for them. They just like totally, are like these wonderful kind of. I guess would they be like Eastern European or Russian? Rozhenko, is that like a Russian kind of? Sergei Rozhenko, I guess it is Russian, right?
It could be. Yeah, I don't know that they ever say exactly.
I don't think they say exactly.
They say Earth Station Babrusk, and I wonder if that's a real place.
That's right.
We could probably figure it out that way. But
there's also, Sergei was an engineer, so that was kind of cool that he served on an Excelsior class ship. And
oh yeah, he has that exchange with Chief O'Brien.
And also with Geordi, though, in engineering, where he's like, I have all the schematics at home, and he even knows where like the turbo shaft is.
I have all the specs and diagrams for Galaxy class warship.
It's so good. And then it's just touching when, as soon as Worf leaves, the first thing he does is he asks Geordi if like his son's okay because of the discommodate. So I don't know if you remember, but last season Worf was discommoddated from as a warrior in the Klingon Empire.
Right, to prevent civil war, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, he takes one for the team. And so this season we're gonna have, I think, the end of that, like the resolution to that, if I recall correctly. But there's just like this kind of, they've been kind of hinting at it for a few episodes, and he even says in the beginning to Commander Riker that he doesn't think that any human could understand the weight of
the depth of his shame and
dishonor, right? And so he's also kind of like struggling with that, but of course his parents are supremely concerned, and it's very cute. And I love the scene in 10 Forward. It's my favorite scene after the vineyard tumble.
Right?
Yes, where she's basically, like just kind of in her own way, she does that whole thing of like when Worf, people come here and they look homeward from 10 forward, and when Worf is looking out, he's not looking towards the Klingon Empire, he's looking at you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I melted. It was so
yeah, that definitely helps me. Oh. He's not looking at Cronus.
Exactly. And then even just like you can see like Worf treating them with like this like really nice tenderness, and then it culminates in that scene where they confront him, and he finally has to kind of bear his shame to them, and they're like, and then his mom, of course, in a beautiful mom kind of way, is like of course we're here for you, and of course we're gonna be bearing this as a family. You don't have to bear this alone. So it was a very like just lovely note on Worf, and I feel a lot in a lot of ways like the characterizations of his parents remind me a lot of my own parents. So as an adult, it was especially more sentimental than when I watched it as a kid. I think I remember being like, oh, they're cute, but they're really annoying. And now I find them less annoying and more endearing. So it's an interesting thing to kind of see happen. I didn't really like when I remember when I watched it, obviously I watched TNG when it first aired, and then I watched it again. I think the next like major rewatch was with you and your family. And then I maybe watched it on reruns, of course, but then in this little experiment or project, rewatching it again, it's just interesting because now I'm in kind of like I guess you could call me a realized adult. And so I get a lot more out of these episodes than I did as a younger person. And so the scene that affected me, even though I don't have children of my own, was the Jack Crusher scene. I found myself extremely finding that to be extremely touching, because there are a lot of kiddos in my life now.
Mm-hmm.
Your family. I'm a surrogate uncle to the children. To the next generation in your family. And so when I saw that moment, I was like, man, it's like that's crazy. We do have to kind of leave messages behind for the little ones, because who knows what,
I hope Bruce can come in on this episode if he makes it in time.
I know,
because I'm sure he might be particularly affected by that part. But
yeah, I felt when I was rewatching it, because I asked your brother. There's a slight chance your brother will appear on the show. He's we're gonna say that he's mercurial, just like Robere. And so we don't really know. He might disagree with the blasted technology, but yeah, he's a father, and I just was like, oh no, I hope this is not too heavy, because he does have a very sensitive heart. So I hope this is not something that's too heavy to watch. But yeah, so that kind of stood out in the episode, for me. But of course, the best stuff, the juiciest stuff in the episode was the Picard thing. And in this episode, I think it's like the first time we get hints of like this honorable sort of like family, and very proud family before, where he like kind of alludes to Picards that had served at like Trafalgar, I think, or something like that. And
yeah, we have this. We know Picard obviously is French, and we know he has France, I think, that much is established, but you also get the sense he's extremely proud of it.
Yeah.
But what you don't know, and which we find out here, is how he's basically perceived as having turned his back on everything the Picard family represents. At least by Robere.
At least by Robere, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about his family for a moment. So Picard is unmarried, has no children, but his brother is married to absolutely delightful angel of a woman, Marie.
Yes.
And has the most adorable child, Renee, who is like, just wins you over from the beginning as soon as you meet him. And there's that really cute
hiding in the
scene.
bushes.
Yeah. And he's like, he accidentally calls Picard his nephew.
You're my nephew.
You're my nephew. And then there's the whole exchange of like, what does father call you? An arrogant son of a. Oh, we'll talk about that later.
Let's talk about that later.
I also like that we find out we get like a little sort of commentary on how there's really no crime on Earth when he does the whole like, oh, don't hurt me. There hasn't been a highwayman reported in these parts for centuries, and it's like, so it's kind of a nice little way of reminding everyone how utopian Earth really seems, and that it might be just like it might just be that humans have conquered all their ills and things like that. So, or it is rather, not it might be. And then there's also some interesting scenes that show, of course, the Picard vineyard is like this like beautiful, untouched by time, and and then they'll pan away a couple times to like show these full shots, and then you see like
you see these technological structures
in the background, like in the town. So that like
Picard Ranch,
that the town,
which could be from any century, really. Like
right.
It has a sense of timelessness.
It's true. I had the fortune of walking through some vineyards in France, and I thought a lot about this episode when I was doing that. It was it came to mind. But what a life that is. And so then, of course, we meet Marie and Renee first, and then they're there to greet Jean-Luc, but Robere is busy in the vineyard, so Picard has to Jean-Luc actually has to go to him. And their greeting scene is really interesting because Robere's not unkind to him. He's not like unwelcoming, but he's not exactly like embracing him either. He doesn't even get up.
Oh yeah. He's like munching on the grapes, tending to the vine, very, very intensely. What is it? And I think the line is like, "So you came after all."
It's a really good impression of Robere's voice. That's good. You do good impressions of both Jean-Luc and Robere. That's very excellent. Yeah, and he does, and he's like, basically, he's like, your way around. Make yourself at home. See you at dinner. And then that dinner scene's pretty crazy too. I thought there was a lot of tension. Now, it should be pointed out that we're dying to have your brother on here, but you guys don't have that kind of you guys actually have a lovely relationship as far as I could tell.
No, there are a couple of parallels that make me think about it, but by and large, like, Oos is very outwardly sweet, so
very nice, very outwardly sweet. I like how you fit that.
there's no like stiffness or tension, and
no, not at all. But it is interesting that there are some similarities. He is your older brother, of course, and he is a brewmaster. So there's a bit of a family tradition that's similar here to the Picards with their vineyard. And recently you've taken up brewing beer, have you not?
I have, yeah.
Excellent. So yeah, I like that that's something that you guys share in common, and it makes sense that eventually we know from All Good Things. By the way, there's no worries about spoilers on this show. You can talk about the whole context, and you have to really, I think, in cases like this. But in All Good Things, we see Picard working his vineyard, the family vineyard. So we know that eventually, at least in that alternate, idea of the future, that Picard that's where he ends up. And I kind of like that he ends up there. What I'm still conflicted on is, and I don't know how you feel about it, I'm curious, but what do you think of what they did to Picard's character in Generations by basically killing his family on Earth?
Oh, well, I was very upset about it, and I don't really think about it.
Exactly. And after watching this episode, it kind of incensed me or fueled me a little bit more.
Yeah, like, what not to acknowledge that happened.
There's of course, in many ways it's so good because it does give the character a new kind of depth, if you will. But yeah, it's one of those decisions that I kind of also wish to not acknowledge if I could, because it is so traumatic, especially when you see this episode and how delightful the characters are. And we really would have liked, I think I would have really loved the idea, even if we never really saw it, that Rene Picard does succeed Jean-Luc as a captain or as a as a Starfleet officer, and comes into Starfleet just like his uncle at some point. So
right.
Yeah, it is pretty terrible. But maybe, I always, one of the missions of Starfleet Boy, I should let you know, is that we're petitioning for one more TNG film with the TNG cast, just like how the original series got to get a sign off basically in Star Trek 6. I feel that the Next Generation crew needs one, and there's a lot of things that can happen. I mean, Q could come back. We could get he could be, he could Grant.
There have been epic modifications to the timeline already.
Already, so what? Why can't we? Maybe as a little.
If you can destroy Vulcan, then surely Q can pull some strings, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's my hope, and my wish is that somehow the fire is undone. I can't even think of it.
One thing I did want to point out, though, going back to the first meeting, is you also discover that I think this is Picard's first time meeting Marie in 20 years.
Yeah, it's been almost 20 years. Yeah, and he thanks her for her correspondence because it made him feel connected to the family.
Crazy that he has not had any interaction with his family, in person, in 20 years.
Yeah,
think about that. Yeah.
I don't know what that's even like. It's crazy. He must have had some really but I mean, it does also seem like he does. It's not like he doesn't correspond. So again, there's the correspondence with Maurice, and then Lewis, who we haven't mentioned yet, seems to have been in touch here and there, with Picard as well. Well, so then there's that. We were talking about the dinner scene, how we find out that the town wants to give him the key to the city, and basically this character Lewis wants to come meet him, and of course he's like a huge celebrity, and it must be akin to I don't know, I would imagine that if he wanted to, because of this, the many, the Borg situation in and of itself, but then later on there's even more things that Picard is credited to for saving planet Earth, but it would be basically Eisenhower coming home, and then if he wants to, he could have any job he wants, and I think that Picard could even become president of the Federation one day if he wanted to. It'd be pretty cool for his character arc. But yeah, so then we get another little fight at dinner, which I thought was interesting, and that one ends really when Marie's like, this is an old fight. And I actually love Robere's tenderness to her. It's like, no matter how upset he gets, when Marie's just calm down, he's like, yes, you're right.
Yes, just, it is an old fight.
And then of course then you get it's just beautifully written because it just keeps escalating. You see Picard becoming more and more annoyed as the episode rolls on.
Robere is pushing all of the buttons.
Every
single one. And he's provocative. He does it intentionally.
Which basically our brothers and sisters do. I mean, it's I thought about this. It's there's things that only I can bring out the worst in my sister, basically, just by triggering a few keywords here and there. And likewise, she can really test my resolve and bring out the worst in me. And I wonder, that's something that to all the people in the audience who are only children, I'm sure that you connect in that way with a friend or a cousin or a family member. But having a sibling is, I think, I think this episode kind of like nails the complexity of having a sibling, where, you know, it's a unique relationship. And you have two siblings, by the way. We haven't mentioned your lovely sister yet, but but it is unique. And I happen to know, because I was a part of your family, that and it was like done out of pure love, but we did torture you quite a bit when you were and I'm included in that. I have to say that I like became your brother became two-headed, because I was kind of always on his side when it came to like some of the humor that we would do. And so I want to just say on my behalf that I hope we didn't really like bully you or anything like that, but if we did, it wasn't intended that way.
No, it's what brothers do.
Yeah. Whenever vineyard tumbles. So there's that scene, and then it gets worse and worse. And I thought finally, after the vineyard tumble, well, let's talk about the vineyard tumble for a second. There's a lot that I think. What do you think of that whole scene? Do you think Robere was like, all along he was like trying to like push Picard back to his kind of like true self? Like, is that like what it, you know, maybe to Robere it's like you're like, we all have this kind of like defense mechanism that we put up, but that we don't usually have with our families. And so you can kind of imagine that like it's been 20 years, you know, from Robert's perspective, maybe there is, he sees that Picard is different. Like there is something like that he's holding back, or that he's like.
He's FaceTiming me.
Oh, cool. Let's see if we can get him on.
Can you pause it, or what do you want to do?
You could. This is part of the show, so like just pick up the phone and let's see what he says.
It's actually Julian.
Oh, hi.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Uncle Moni. Happy birthday.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, we can actually hear him saying, "Hi, Uncle Moni, happy birthday." Aw.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday, Uncle Moni. Happy birthday to you. Yay!
Oh, thank you, Julian.
Speaking of brothers, tell him to get on the hangout.
We're recording Starfleet Boy right now.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll let you guys go. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Well,
you can't make it.
Can you just come on for a second?
Papa Diddy.
He's on Papa duty.
Oh, okay. Oh well.
But I did watch the episode.
Okay. He did watch it though.
He can come on with Julian and just.
Do you want to come on with Julian?
We're actually talking about the brother part right now.
I don't think that won't work.
All right. Oh.
You guys go ahead.
Okay. I'll call you back in a little bit.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Love you too.
I'm gonna call back. Bye.
Well, it looks like we did get a
special appearance. You just had audio there, right?
Yeah, that was pretty sweet. That was really nice to hear. And we got to hear Julian, my little godson. So cute. All right, so it's appropriate that this episode of Starfleet Boy is one where family members actually like come on and stuff like that. Very, very nice. Anyways, I wonder if there wasn't a degree of like where Robert knew that like pushing him this way would unleash these emotions that his little brother's like keeping inside, that he should be expressing and dealing with, because it actually ends up being the result when he like finally breaks down. Which, by the way, Patrick Stewart's just a brilliant actor. Of course, we know this, but it's such a beautiful performance. When he breaks down, it's so real, and in the scenes when he's angry, it seems so genuine as well. And so,
yeah. Well, you run the sort of full gamut. You can say they start beating each other up, and then they both start laughing, and then Picard breaks down crying It's like all in the span of a minute and a half.
Yeah,
It's
it's like
completely seamless.
seamless and natural, and it was just really really well done.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it's it is a pretty, in terms of what Robere is doing, I think it's pretty complicated, because I think part of him, the competitive part of him, probably he knows something extremely traumatic has happened to his brother, and I think there's genuine concern about that. But I think also part of him is sort of like maybe relishing the fact that his brother is human and has fallen to Earth, and he wants to see that arc complete.
And he says it. He's like, so my little brother is human after all.
Yeah, he comes out and says it, but he does say it very understandingly and tenderly.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's true.
He knows he must, and also he's like, so what did happen to you up there? Like, what on earth could have caused you after 20 years to suddenly show up at my doorstep? Like, he must know just from that fact, as Deanna suggested at the beginning of the episode, like, this is epic.
Right. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, I'm getting a little emotional even thinking about it right now. It's like, who else would you want after a situation like that than like to be in the arms of your brother or your family member? You know, he doesn't have his mother and father anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And Robere is his older brother. So in a way, he represents that kind of like parental, bond or whatever, and so on, especially since Robere is so much like, apparently, like his father, like like their father, rather.
Do we ever know what his father's name is? Did they say that?
I don't think they said it. It'd be worth looking up. I can do that right now, actually. We're going to the Memory Alpha. Usually it's Maurice Picard.
Oh, Maurice. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and he's, of course, we see him. I didn't remember that.
Wait. Well, I know we see his mother in one of the first episodes, right?
There's a picture of Maurice Picard here on Memory Alpha, and it says that he was played by Clive Church, the actor, and appeared in the episode. So his name was mentioned in Chain of Command Part 1.
Which one? I forgot.
Chain of Command, I think, is, let's see. I think it's one. Oh, we haven't gotten to that one yet. That's Captain Jellicoe when he takes over the Enterprise for that. I think isn't that there are four lights?
The metaphasic cloaking device, that one?
Oh, yeah. But isn't this the episode? No, you're right. Yes, it is. I forget.
Where that's the Pegasus, right?
No, that's Riker's old captain. And that's this season, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. Maybe next season. No, that's like season 5 or 6, I think, or 7 actually. It might be even season
7. I think it's 7.
Yeah. But apparently, let's see, what episode did he appear in? According to Memory Alpha here, it says Maurice Picard was a very traditional man. Opposed to Jean-Luc's, which we find out here, joining Starfleet, family vineyard. So I guess he appears.
This is Chief O'Brien's old commander, right? Jellicoe?
Right. No. Yeah. Yes. Is it
the Cardassians? Right.
Right. It's the Cardassian episode. The only memory I have of that episode, I think, is that he forces Deanna to wear a uniform, and then after that she wears a uniform. Basically, something's going on here. Later in the year, I can't see what episode Maurice appears in, but let's see if we click on Clive Church if it tells us. 6th season, Tapestry. I don't remember him in Tapestry. Do you?
No, I have no memory of this.
Maybe Q appears to Picard as Maurice in one scene or something. Now we'll have to look out for that when we watch Tapestry. Anyways, what were we what were we saying about this? Oh, so now we know his name, Maurice Picard, and we never actually see him. But you do get the sense of what he might have been like through Robere.
It's supposed to be just like him, yeah.
Yeah. And well, anyways, so then of course there's that really delightful scene where the brothers are singing that French and then Marie playfully chides them about the mess they've made and all this stuff. And well, anyways, what's lovely is that at this point we get back our Captain Picard. It's like he went through all this doubt. He thought about leaving Starfleet for a moment, for like 2 seconds. And what I love is that like you don't see Jean-Luc wearing a uniform until the end of the episode where he's going back, and then he's in his uniform. It's like it kind of really stands out because it's so different from, you know, there's a lot of like muted colors and stuff like that throughout the vineyard, and then, you know, earth tones, and then all of a sudden at the end of the episode he's donning his beautiful red, you know, uniform, which I was like, oh my gosh, the uniform never looked better. For some reason it just like, really like stood out in that scene. I really like, you know, there's still a few things I want to talk about on the episode, but since we're at this point anyways, I just adore that we see Maurice's true character at the very end of the episode when Renee's outside sitting under a tree gazing up at the stars, imagining, you know, whatever he's imagining.
Oh, let him dream.
Yeah, and he's like, let him dream. And he's just
Marie
like,
wants to call him inside, yeah.
and he's just like the whole scene, it's like this, he's there with his wonderful
the shooting star.
Like, yeah, and then but like just even like you see that like now that the whole situation, the little trauma with Picard, you know, and everything is resolved and life is kind of returned back to normal, you see a glimpse of Robere's like just everyday life, which is like little conflicts, like should we let our son stay out a little longer? And there's like a fireplace, you know, there's a fire running in the hearth, and like he's got his glass of wine and he's just so delighted to surprise his wife by by saying let him dream. And you know, there's just these wonderful things, and like it makes you want more of his family. And then of course we don't ever see them again, but but at least we know that they're there in the backdrop. So yeah, just super delightful. Not much more to say about that.
Well, there's I think very tellingly, Robere then walks with Picard and Marie to wherever Picard transports from in the village.
Oh, right.
And gives him a very, very, very
that
long
touching hug. That's right.
embrace.
It's true. You even see like the actor looks like he.
In addition to a bottle of 47. Drink the alcohol.
I like the part where he's like, Picard's like, "Is this the
is this 46?
The 46?" And he's like, "No."
He says, "Is it 47?" He's like, 46. Your palate has grown weak, or something like that.
I thought it was also interesting that like they were having a debate about getting a replicator in the house. Is that like the debate about getting a microwave in the house? Does that debate even happen?
Well, no. It's like I think the implication is the same debate happened with their parents.
Oh, that's right.
So they're like probably like generations after replicators have been adopted mostly, and here they are like living in the 20th century, or even that living room could have been from even earlier. Like it literally was timeless. Like you don't even see electricity in that scene, I think.
I don't think you really do. It's true. You see everything's candlelit and like fireplaces and stuff like that. Do you think that there is I think there's a scene where Picard remarks that there should be room for the past and the future in life. And I think that's an interesting thing, because right now in our country we are kind of faced with this like group of people who want to take things back, and like don't agree with the progress we've made as Americans or humans, or just all over the world. Actually, there's groups like this that are like yearning for some kind of past. Do you equate this to the like this kind of like mood to a similar kind of attitude as Robere, or what do you think is behind that?
No, this is a little. I mean, and nostalgia is present in both, although one is clearly more pernicious than the other. Like one is nostalgia for a simpler way of, or a more manual, physical way of being, right? Like tending to real vineyards, making your own wine without the use of this technology that sort of, well, this can be a whole broader discussion, actually. But to keep it for the simple purposes of contrast, like this is yearning for a way of life where there were, white people who were paramount and could oppress and enslave an entire group of people, and it's based off of whether what they want to acknowledge it or not, a hatred for other groups of people. And the nostalgia comes from the fact that they feel that the life for them in their position as a privileged white person would have been simpler and better back then. This is different. And this is another question we're going to be facing soon, which is like technology is going to replace so many things that humans can do. Replicators could replace cooking. But at what point do you draw the line where, machines can do anything that a human can? At what point do you just say, even though a machine can do this better than me, what is there an inherent value to me doing it myself for my own happiness, for the act of creation? Like, and so it's like you can replicate wine with synthehol, or you can grow the vine yourself and create this beautiful creation with your own hands. And I think that's, the Robere Picards of the world are in this traditionalist camp that see that there's an inherent virtue to preserving that way of life.
Well said, well said. Because it is easy to, I think, at first, like, wonder if Robere's way of thinking isn't out of some kind of stubborn, like, abhorrent, like he's not like just repulsed, which he is, by technology and disagrees with one wonders if Robere even just disagrees with the path that humanity has taken. Like, I think he has a general, disdain for like the use of technology. And I thought I saw an interesting TED talk about, the landscape today of how on the internet, basically technology in itself, of course, doesn't have a leaning one way or the other, but it can be used to do great things, or it can be used to do really sort of terrible things. And like, it just seems what stands out more and more today is all the terrible uses of technology, as we see with like, hacking of elections and like, things like that. And it just makes one wonder, are things gonna get worse? Like, how do we safeguard against these like, awful uses of technology, and how do we like continue to integrate technology into our lives in a way that's like, positive and ethical and things like that, without, no one wants to be like insanely regulated. We want to, like, the idea is that we have our liberties and things like that. So I kind of like can see myself like a little bit like Robere in that sense, where I'm like, like maybe it is good to cook, or just keep a few traditions that are really good while embracing technology, so you can feel grounded as you go through it. It kind of will inform the way you use technology in general. So
it's funny because obviously I identify with Picard so much in terms of like, his sort of ambitions and outlook for the future. But at the same time, I am quite a traditionalist. It's like I would not, I prefer to do things manual. I think technology does deprive. Technology can make us soft, and I think this is a good time for like the basis of the whole Dune universe too, which is, at some point in Dune that humanity abandons more complex forms of technology that replace human thought, right? And choose the spice to augment human faculties, because there's something lost at some point where technology supplants complex tasks. Like, so I had a discussion with somebody last week. They're like, well, do you think computers can ever replace lawyers?
Yeah.
And I said, certainly, like, you can commit some things to a lawyer. I mean, I think technology has made my job simpler and enhanced my productivity in many ways as a lawyer. But and maybe, like, for simple technical violations, did this person drive at 45 miles per hour in a 20-mile zone? Yes, guilty.
Right.
Here's the video footage. Science tells us that you were driving at this rate. Unless you can disprove with some evidence that the technology was tampered, then this is conclusive evidence. Computer can do that easily, right? But there are nuances to everything that right now, at least, a computer can't hope to emulate, but at some point maybe. I said at the point that a computer can replace me, a computer could replace a human in any capacity. And then you have to decide whether it's worth humans doing anything.
Wow, yeah, that's a crazy idea.
Yeah.
But that is what happens in Dune eventually, like, yeah. And also, similarly, it happens in Battlestar Galactica with the Cylons.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. It's also interesting, I find, that outside of Data, there aren't really many robots in Star Trek. Have you ever noticed that? Like,
yeah, it's interesting that Data is such a unique. I mean, because in some ways, our technology is proceeding at a faster pace than I think Star Trek predicts. Like, I think we'll have it. I think we'll have a Data much sooner than we will have faster than light travel, unless there's some unforeseen development that happens very soon in the future, which could happen. But
I think we'll have pretty fast travel soon, though, like near light speed travel, perhaps. There's actually a warp drive that's in development at NASA, and who knows how long it'll take before they actually start testing this thing.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is fascinating. But apparently, I don't know how much you know about Star Trek Discovery, which is coming up, but and we don't know, of course, until it airs. But originally, when Brian Fuller was attached to the project, he wanted to have more aliens and more robots on the show. Because I mean, in the original series, we do have the humorous but interesting androids. The Mudd's women were androids.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, there have been some before, but not like, they're not as ubiquitous as they are, like, for example, in Star Wars, where you have droids doing exactly what you're saying, is that eventually, like, there will be droids cleaning our windows and, you know, doing things that are, like, dangerous, basically. I think that's where it's going to start, is that, like, you know, droids or robots will start to take on jobs that are considered dangerous for humans, like jobs where we find that, you know, where it's easy for a human to be injured or even die. So, and then a lot of, like, things that we can't even just do, like, even with suits on, we can't go too deep for too long in the ocean, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, things like that. So there are some promising things, like, for example, one way, I know you know this, but I'm surprised at how little coverage it's getting, that all the coral reefs are basically dying out on our planet, which is really a strange thing to think about. I don't swim or dive, but when I was young, I mean, like, the coral reefs were just like a magical place that, you know, you would learn about. And then living in Florida, you could even go out on a glass bottom boat, and even if you couldn't swim, you could still see the beauty of the reefs.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently now those very same reefs that I saw as a kid are bleached, are, you know, they're basically, they're gone. And that's crazy to think that that's happening. But there are some concepts and ideas that maybe, like, robots can help to, like, restore these, like, you know, dying places, or at least keep them healthy through whatever means, you know, through keeping the water temperatures stable, or through, you know, there's all kinds of ideas. But, like, that's the implication that you get throughout Star Trek: The Next Generation, but especially in this episode, and with Picard's conversations with Lewis, one gets the idea that, like, humans have kind of restored Earth to this, like, idyllic place. Like, they've manipulated even the weather and the temperature to restore the Earth to, like, this, like, sort of, like, Goldilocks, you know, habitability that that is that we're moving away from and that we're losing. And so I think it's interesting, and so there is some hope that even though our generation is seeing the dying off of all these like natural wonders and treasures, there's some hope that like if we continue to develop technology in the direction of where it can be of value and can help humans, then we can maybe even bring back some of these like things that are going away. So yeah, very cool. I guess one in my notes here, I wrote down that when when we meet Jack Crusher for the first time, I was struck by his handsomeness.
This is the first time we see Jack Crusher? I don't remember.
I think so, because I know there was a flashback, or will be a flashback, where Captain Picard is bringing Jack Crusher's body back or something like that, and he even has hair in that scene. And of course we've heard mention of him, and he's one of Picard's closest friends. But this is, I think, the first time we actually see him portrayed by an actor. And then I couldn't help but think this time when I saw it, I was like, man, it would have been really cool to have had a Jack Crusher spin-off series at the time. So that would have been really neat. And Gates McFadden could have, reprised her role as Beverly Crusher. I mean, she still could if you did a spin-off series today and cast, a younger actress, but you could have Gates.
I mean, you could have a CGI Gates McFadden.
That's true. That's true. But you could have actual Gates McFadden in the present reminiscing, and that's what the show could be set up as. It's a la Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, but
I think even Battlestar Galactica has had sort of retrospectives where you see Bill Adama in the first Cylon War.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. You do.
With his call sign, Husker or whatever it was.
You also see, I do love the like Blood and Steel or whatever it's called, the spin-off where they even have they portray that period with a different actor playing him as a young person.
Oh, that's right.
And then you have
we've incorporated so many series into this discussion. It's really funny.
Well, Ron Moore, of course, who was a prominent writer on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then even more on Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, is the creator of the reimagined Battlestar Galactica. So I think there is a lot of I feel like Battlestar Galactica in many ways does take a lot of these same ideas and do spin them in a different take. So yeah, I think it's totally appropriate that we talk about all science fiction while we're talking about Star Trek. And Next Generation certainly inspired a lot of things. There's a lot of kind of it's well known that they tried to make these episodes as standalone as possible, but you can't help it through the characters themselves. You kind of do get these like nice arcs of story arcs and progressions. And so while you can watch Next Generation like out of order and you can just kind of pop into any episode, there are these kind of like fixed points, if you will, that if you watch them, they definitely tell a story about the cast, and through that like you get a story about the universe as well, which Battlestar Galactica does to the umpteenth degree, and it does it so well. But yeah, I thought about that, and then I thought it would have been actually pretty cool to have a kid's show with Worf as a kid, like to help kids deal with complex emotions and anger management and like all kinds of things. So there were a lot of opportunities, but unfortunately, like, who knows? Maybe we could do them in cartoons now.
Well, I mean, we have Alexander Roshenko a little bit.
That's right. Because that's coming up this season too.
His mother is half Klingon, right? Or she's
half Klingon, half human. Yep.
Yeah. So he himself is 3/4 Klingon, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so she, yeah, exactly. So Alexander is going to play a big part in the upcoming, and we do deal with a lot of those, like what Worf might have gone through as a child as well, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But also different. I forget. I think it was like something like "I don't want to be a warrior" happens in that one scene or something, and that episode's coming up soon
He's
too.
horrified.
What? Wow. Is there anything else? Let's see. What do I have in my notes here?
I'll just say it was like, I think after watching it, what was so beautiful to it about me is how perfectly structured it is. Like obviously you have Picard himself recovering from an extremely traumatic event and coming into the embrace of family, but also you have Worf dealing with a very similar, I guess, more long-term. I don't know how many episodes before his discommodation was, but
it's been a few. It's been like at least it happened like maybe late last season. So yeah, we've had a few mentions of it throughout the rest of the season too.
But yeah, two very conservative, bottled up characters coming to terms with their, I guess, wounds and emotional wounds and having to, or being forced into a position of expressing that. I mean, it makes us much closer to the characters as a whole. So that's why I love it so much. And then the closing sequence with the embrace and the shooting star also.
Beautifully done. And yeah, so we give episode ratings on the show from a scale of 1 to 10, but I think this episode for me ranks so high that I think it cannot be rated necessarily, but if I had to give it a rating, I would say it's an 11.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with that assessment.
Excellent.
It's one of my favorites, hands down. Aside from others, which I think I'll be joining on as well.
Yeah, we already have you booked for one. I won't tell the audience which one that is, so it's a surprise. Cool. Well, so what do you have planned for your birthday, young chap, young fellow?
Nothing much. Just I had the Harry Potter experience yesterday, so I'm just taking it easy today.
Well, very good. Well, I will end the show on that note. Wish you happy birthday again, and as we always say, live long and prosper, and see you next time. Thanks for coming on. I'm so honored.
Thank you. It was super fun.